Well, good morning again, everybody, and welcome to our Monday morning market review with yours truly, Ian Giffen. It's already well into December. We are looking now at the last couple of weeks of the year, and as many of you know, I always recommend that you start looking at suspending your trading as we get deeper into December. Very often you'll see that the market goes into a bit of a slowdown. That's not always the case. I would say it's probably the case 75% of the time. But in any event, I personally am seeing some signs of a bit of a slowdown in some markets. But overall, at the moment, we're still seeing some nice directional bias. And certainly last week, you guys should have been able to milk it. We've had an interesting few months during the course of our 2020 trading challenge. So yes, it's not been the easiest time, but that's really what separates the really professional traders, those who have learned how to especially not take bad trades, and those who go to survive. You know, the tough times in trading are always the ones where the best lessons are learned, and it's certainly those times where we can differentiate most easily between people who are likely to survive for the long term and unfortunately those who not. But then if you've made some mistakes, then you can always learn from them. This is one of the beauties of trading, is that as long as you never trade more than what you are prepared to lose, then it's always possible to start again. That's another very important thing we're going to be talking about the next week or so. I'm going to be announcing the rollout of our funded accounts for our members in good standing, where you will be able to trade with a starting account, trading other people's money, and build that up over time, obviously using good trading practices and everything that you've learned from us, to a point where you'll be able to trade a $2 million account of other people's money and make profit on that for yourself. And I'm sure you'll agree with me, that's quite substantial. Right, so that's something we're going to be talking about over the next week or two. So please do stay tuned, especially for those of you who are members of the GoPro Trading Academy. All right, so let's jump into the market review, starting as always with the Euro USD. You'll notice that last week we had that continuation, very nice continuation, after we had the breakout that we discussed before on the 27th. We spoke about that a week ago. The Monday's candle didn't do terribly much, obviously, but then for those who are trading the lower time frames, you should already have been into a very nice little trade there. And I think there was more than one winner in that strong impulse wave through the course of last week, which really came to an end. It fizzled out on Friday. And it looks like the high formed on Friday is going to be ringed today. But it's a little bit early in the day, so let's see what happens. But this picture is consistent across a number of instruments. Just looking at also at the weekly time frame, last week we did therefore have that outside close. So for channel traders, we've got an absolutely valid breakout. Likewise for a potential W pattern, assuming we do get a pullback on this, then over the course of the next, well, again, we obviously are running into the Christmas period, but if we were ignoring that for the meantime, it could well be a valid W pattern. That might even stand us in good stead in a month or so's time, but let's not second guess the market, of course. But certainly something to look out for as we go into the new year. All right, we didn't really see the same type of activity on the pound. So part of the theme for last week, I guess, was that US dollar weakness that we've just seen there. Well, it's not showing itself to the same extent here, clearly on the GBP, on the cable. And likewise, you know, when we look at our weekly time frame, you'll see that it actually did last week just test that resistance level, but it failed to break through. And as you know, for those of us who are price action traders, this is what we look for. We look to see what the market is actually going to do when it approaches these levels of support and resistance. For those of you who are trading the advanced on money patterns, We did discuss before that this was a perfect Gartley setup with an absolutely spot-on 618 retracement for the B and an absolutely perfect point C as well. It did go a little bit further through our entry point, but it did not go as far as the stop, and it looks like it's turned around now. And you should actually be in a small profit on this one already if you are trading the advanced harmonic patterns. So just an interesting one there to keep an eye on. Right, so dollar yen, still nothing. I'm just going to skip through those that we're not really interested in. Of course, the Swissy being almost a mirror image of the Euro USD. And once again, there was potential setups over here, not quite as blatantly obvious as we had on the Euro, but certainly there was an entry here last week Thursday, I think, for some of our lower time frame strategies. And although it hasn't continued quite as nicely as it did on the Euro, and depending on your targeting, you might have made some money there, but you certainly would be in a risk-free trade. All right, so not quite as attractive, of course, as the Euro. USD CAD again, seeing that dollar weakness. There's also quite significant strength on the Canadian dollar as well, partly because we've had a bullish breakout on oil, as I'm sure many of you have known. And Canada is predominantly an oil-based economy. So once again, a very nice setup was had on this one for lower time frame strategies. Again, I'm not going to dwell on strategies here, especially not for the challenge. But we did talk about this as well last week, where we had a valid M pattern. We also had that breakout on Wednesday. So certainly it was tradable in the latter part of last week. Pulling back typical Monday morning activity, but that's certainly, depending on your targeting technique, you should have been able to milk that quite nicely. We've also got that outside close here on this one as well. Nice solid breakout. We did have it just beforehand. So for those of you who are looking to trade the daily impulse, again, I'm falling back into strategy chat. There was definitely a trade here, and you should still be in it, and almost at break even. So let's see what happens with this one. Obviously, with the daily impulse, it can take quite a few, could even take a few weeks for a successful trade to work itself out. But definitely you should be in one there if that's what you're trading. Right, so here on Aussie, Aussie and Kiwi, I mean, the Kiwi we'll come to in a second, but the strength of the Kiwi has been a theme for certainly the last month or so. And to a limited extent, the Aussie has also shown some strength, which we can see here against the dollar. And against that, again, that dollar weakness did show itself, but also Friday, that fizzling out somewhat. But it was a valid W pattern, as I think we discussed last Monday. So for those of you who are trading those lower time frames, this was absolutely tradable through the course of last week, but I'm sure you're out of it by now. We also had that marginal outside close that we discussed. No, we didn't discuss it. We can talk about it now. We were talking about the fact that it was testing that resistance level last week. Well, last week, through the course of last week, we did have a marginal outside close. So again, a potential setup here during the course of this week for our daily impulse. But yeah, I mean, depending on what strategies you're trading, you should have been able to make some money out of this last week. On the Kiwi, again, as I mentioned before, that New Zealand dollar strength has been a theme for quite some time. Very much a valid W pattern, as we've spoken about before. And although it hasn't been very high quality price movement, it has been consistently moving up until Friday gave us that ringed high. So a single impulse wave that lasted the best part of 3 weeks is now technically over. Having said that, for those of you who are advanced price action traders, we're still very much in a trend, and we are in fact now looking at potential setups for continuation strategies. All right, so here you have that similar, that's very strong move over the course. Now you can see of 5 weeks, in fact, 4 since we had the breakout, but we've been trading that on the lower time frame. For those of you who are trading those daily strategies, this was a nice one but you should be out of it by now. All right, so those are the majors and the minors. Just skipping a little bit more quickly through some of these other ones. Euro Yen, we had that breakout last week as well. Pretty much going sideways since Thursday, but nevertheless, we did have that. So once again, looking for, so the weekly nothing, just double checking on that. But for our lower time frame trades, you should have been able to get something out of that. You might not make money out of it, but you should have been able to move to a break-even position on that pretty quickly. Again, looking at the GBP here compared to the euro, no action. In fact, we had this resistance level very well respected through the course of last week. In fact, four out of the 5 days last week, it tested it and failed to break through. And of course, today you see it's rolling over very nicely. So, yeah, just that pound strength that we saw previously not showing itself anymore. Right, Swiss yen, again, we look at that correlation across the Swiss franc and the euro. So not as strong here as well, just in the same way as it wasn't as strong against the US dollar. And of course, if we look on the weekly time frame, we're not looking at a breakout here, unlike we had on the euro. All right, so Canadian dollar strength, again, here we see it on the daily time frame against the yen, where we just had a marginal outside close on Friday. So not to be sneezed at. Let's see what happens during the course of this week. We may well have a continuation there, or it may well ultimately respect that resistance level. It's sitting inside the resistance level at the moment. And of course, you'll also notice that on the weekly time frame, it tested that preceding resistance level, but so far has failed to break through it. So not showing massive strength here. Certainly valid as a W pattern. Yes, we can see that. But for channel traders, it's time to sit and wait for a little bit longer on that. We had the breakout on the Aussie yen, certainly last week, Wednesday. But since then, it has been in a retracement. You may well be in a trade here on a lower time frame entry, depending on your strategy rules. For me, it was actually quite nice to see the pullback to what was resistance and now support on Friday, where it did bounce off of it. This morning's Monday morning activity is not proving to be particularly useful, however. In fact, if we just drop down now to the 4-hour time frame, I know I'm delving into some strategy rules again, but you will notice that there was no entry here for our H4 impulse this morning because of this pullback. It doesn't mean that there won't be, although we are running out of time, of course. So, yeah, at the end of the day, however, so far it has respected what was resistance as support, and I quite like the look of that. All right, moving back to our last, not the last one, but the Kiwi Yen. Again, we had that bullish strength of the New Zealand dollar showing itself and then coming to an end last week. So likewise, we're seeing this test of what was resistance, now support on Friday. Let's see what happens today through the course of this Monday morning. But also for me, definitely a continuation entry, because that is still very much a bullish trend. However, if we get a close inside of this price territory here at the end of today, it will be a sign of some weakness. And that's certainly something that you will want to take into account for your trading. All right, Euro GBP, here we are seeing that this Monday morning, a very strong bullish push showing itself. In fact, since I did my analysis on this chart, interesting that, because we're not seeing that on the pound. So this is likely to be euro strength. Yeah, this is not one of my favorite pairs to trade, as you guys will know by now, along with the euro Swiss franc. They're important in terms of helping me assess overall currency strength and weakness when we use our price action currency strength analysis. But apart from that, not something that I'm particularly fond of trading. But having said that, the way things are going at the moment looks like a very good W pattern setting itself up here, as well as a breakout of our 4-wave 13 candle channel. But it's still a bit early for that. So let's wait and see. But that is interesting. That is certainly interesting. A high quality price movement at the moment looks like it's showing itself. Here's our Euro Swiss, as always, not our favorite. Euro CAD, Canadian dollar strength, that did show itself. You know, the Canadian dollar is showing some strength, so is the euro clearly. So not seeing much happening today, and across the board here on the daily time frame, we're still very much inside of a channel. There's nothing tradable there, and that's visible as well on the weekly time frame. So Euro Aussie, yep, likewise. You know, we spoke about this briefly before, that it's still significantly inside of that channel despite an attempted breakout. So yeah, this is not really something that I'd consider trading. Even our W pattern over here wasn't successful. Last of the Euro crosses, again, you can see that New Zealand dollar strength petered out last week. Likewise here on the weekly time frame, where we did in fact have outside closes 2 weeks in a row, it's pulled back last week and closed back inside of the channel. In other words, for me, it means it failed to respect what was resistance as a resistance level, and is now basically turning into a support level. Certainly this is still potentially an M pattern, but that's obviously on the higher time frame and might be something that we could look at in the new year, but that's still some time away, of course. But yeah, here you can see on the daily time frame that it has pulled straight back inside of the channel, and last week there was nothing really tradable here. Right, so moving quickly on to the GBP crosses. Here you see the correlation of the Swiss franc to the euro as well. So similar to the Euro GBP, just a mirror version of it. Seeing something similar happening over there. And here again, Canadian dollar strength showing itself still inside of the channel. Of course, on the daily time frame, also on weekly. There's nothing really for us to look at the moment. There's still quite a lot for this to do before we can actually look to trade it. Let's wait and see on that one. GBP Aussie, here we can see that it's testing the support level that has been intact for quite some time. If you look back over the last 2 months or so. Let's see what happens today. We might well get a breakout here on this one. But if you look on the weekly, you can see there's very little happening here. For those of you who are harmonic pattern traders, then you will recognize that this is pretty much a back pattern setting up, and you might well look to be taking a bullish trade here. Again, may will only happen in the new year, but still something worth looking out for. Still early days, but it looks like it might well be moving in that direction. Last, the GBP crosses, the Gbp Nzd. This is a little bit more interesting, of course. So just going to the weekly time frame first, we did have that outside close as we discussed before. And last week it pulled back inside and closed inside the channel. Having said that, we don't have an isolated low. So this bearish wave is in fact still intact at the moment. And today's price action shows that we're likely going to have a continuation here. So for those of you who are continuation traders, you will already be in a trade here. So it was absolutely valid. I've already drawn in our next wave, but obviously if you are trading the three-wave channel, we had that breakout. It respected on Friday, but it did respect that resistance level. It tested inside, closed outside, perfect setup, and you would have had a pending order ready to trigger this morning, which would have kicked in. So I've taken the liberty of already drawing in the next wave. I know it's a little bit premature, but I'm pretty certain that we're going to see this continue to move down. And regardless, it's in any event, this now has to be a bearish wave. All right, so that's a little bit more interesting trade for this morning. Hopefully you guys, you are continuation traders, have taken advantage of that setup. CAD Swiss, nothing doing there, of course. Aussie Swiss, likewise, very much sideways, not interested in this at all. Aussie CAD, still inside of the channel. Quite a deep channel, of course, because of that bullish move that we had last month. Or the month before even, moving into last month. But here we are seeing again some strength showing on the Canadian dollar. So that's why we're seeing that bearish impulse candle and impulse wave on Friday. Let's wait and see what happens on this one. Aussie Kiwi, we've spoken about before. So last week, really, we saw a significant and a very abrupt end to that bearish move. We're still technically in a bearish trend here, but a very weak one. And it may well show itself completely over with a close above that preceding high. If we do get a higher close above that, then we've got an impulse. So that would be the end of that bearish trend. We did have some nice trades on this over the last few weeks, over a couple of winners, couple of losers, but overall certainly profitable. But that's now something that's come to an end. Weekly time frame, however, is not quite the same story. We've got a potential valid M pattern setting up over here again for the longer term. But yeah, this is certainly showing itself to be respecting this resistance level at the moment. Last week it came up and tested it. It's continued to respect it. So we could well be seeing a continuation on this. Having said that, remember that this bullish candle over here is either going to be a single candle wave if this does roll over, or else we're going to see a continuation of this retracement wave. That means that on the weekly time frame, we are in fact in a retracement at the moment. So you cannot trade bearish impulse strategies here. If you're looking to trade continuation entries on this higher time frame, fair enough. But otherwise, it's not valid to trade on the lower time frames at the moment. Right, so Kiwi Swiss, likewise, that really came to an end. We discussed this a week ago. That the resistance level was being respected, and certainly it gave it a last test last week Tuesday, and since then it's rolled over and come down. So inside the channel, there's no valid pattern for us to look at over here. And even though we had that outside close on weekly the week before, it's pulled back inside of the channel through the course of last week. So showing weakness, unfortunately, here. It is a potential valid W pattern again for the longer term. But nothing on the lower time frames. Final currency pair that we look at here, you can see that Canadian dollar strength, excuse me, showing itself, and in fact, Friday's candle coming all the way back down and closing back inside of the channel, also precluding any possibility for a valid W pattern going forward. So definitely a theme at the moment in the last couple of trading days is this Canadian dollar strength. So yeah, let's keep an eye on that. For those of you who are using the currency strength meter, where we evaluate it using price action criteria, then I think you'll very clearly see that the Canadian dollar pairs are very attractive for trading at the moment. Final look here is at gold. Likewise, we've seen an impulse wave followed by an impulse wave. So that bearish move is absolutely finished. On the daily time frame, we did see a couple 3 weeks basically of bearish move on gold, but it's still inside of the channel there, and there's no valid M or W pattern, of course. So but on the daily time frame, likewise, we're seeing that the US dollar weakness has really allowed us to come straight back, not only inside the channel, but bring that bearish trend, such as it was, to a very abrupt end. So not looking at anything here at the moment. For those of you who are the harmonic pattern traders, you might recognize one of the more recent harmonic patterns over here called the cipher. So it hasn't come back quite far enough. We needed that 786 retracement to trade that in a bearish direction. But that's not one of our favorite patterns anyway, but just in case you were wondering why I haven't mentioned it. All right, so that's pretty much it for today. Again, just looking at USD CAD, where we're seeing a combination of Canadian dollar strength, partially because of the strength of oil, but also US dollar weakness. Very much one of the nicest moves that we had last week. So the question then is, are we going to see a continuation of that through the course of this week? So as far as I'm concerned, starting to pull back. It's already the end of the first week. We've had 1 week of December. And without a shadow of a doubt, it's time, I think, for people to take that well-deserved break as we move towards the end of this fabulous year, 2020. Okay, so yeah, be careful of that. Keep an eye open for markets starting to fizzle out, but allow the market to guide you as well. You know, we don't second guess it. We make sure that we only ever make decisions based on the information that the market is giving to us. Right, so look out for some more training on our for our trading challenge. This is the last week. We did extend it by popular demand for another week. So make sure you get those trades in, and we will be evaluating the winner of the 2020 GoPro Trading Challenge through the course of this coming weekend and early into next week. There will be some additional training for you guys, so look out for that, and we will be chatting about how to help you continue to improve your trading into 2021 and beyond, and also show you how you can access our really exciting funded accounts where you can take on the mantle of a truly professional trader, which is one who trades other people's money. That, folks, is always where the biggest money is to be made. If you want to be a professional trader, if you want to be somebody who does this for a living, then this is the way to go for you. All right, folks, so that's it from me for now. If you have any questions, please pop them into the comments below, and I'll be happy to respond to you. If there's any other training topics that you'd like me to revise through the coming week or so, likewise, please mention them in the group, and I'd be happy to do another live session with you where we can have some Q&A and go from there. All right, folks, once again, enjoy the week's trading. I'll chat to you soon. Bye for now.